It's good to see everyone. And thank you so much for making this happen on such short notice. But I thought it was important to get people's input about going forward, given our current state of Omicron and COVID in our community. So just to set the stage, I sent an email just this afternoon with a list of the forums that we had planned, the dates, the times, and whether they were in person and locations. And also I sent a link to the most current guidance, January return to school guidance from the Oregon Department of Education, which is done in collaboration with the Oregon Health Authority. And if you didn't have a chance to look at that, the guidance is about schools and other organizations have paused, extracurricular activities, which it's something we should consider. Is this guidance? It's only guidance, and it does direct us if we do things in person, we should take the same precautions that we would be taking in our schools with students. So if you didn't have a chance to read it, it's there and you can look at it yourselves. Did everyone get to see the list of forums we have, that document I sent? Because we can also share it. Okay, so I think we have 3 choices, and if someone has some other ideas, please let me know. But one choice is to keep the plan as it is, with some in-person and some virtual. The second would be to do all virtual forums. And the third plan might be to do a hybrid. For example, to maybe do the training in person with Alma consultants and 1 or 2 forums in person. So those are the choices I sort of see in front of us. And I'd like to hear people's thoughts about going forward. Mary.
Well, I did read the directive from the Oregon Department of Education, and I've actually been in contact with the parent this afternoon. They're evidently thinking about canceling a play because of COVID. It just seems a bit hypocritical that we would cancel a school event for students and then continue on with in-person meetings for community meetings when we really can't control who's going to be there, and certainly can't ask for cohorts. It seems rather foolhardy to me, given the quick increase in Omicron. I feel like it should be all online, and that, trying to sort out who gets to go online, who gets to be in person will be a nightmare, especially if we're talking about cohort groups and trying to limit people. And then if they're going to come in for a week from, as I can tell, 3 different places in the United States, that concerns me too. They're flying in, and I'm not sure that I want to necessarily meet in person with that set of people. Nothing against them, but who knows? That's how the COVID gets spread. So those are my thoughts. I can live with whatever the group decides, but like I said, it just seems a bit hypocritical if we're talking about canceling student events that we would go along as if nothing's going on here. Thanks.
Great. Other people? Oh, Laurel's got her hand up.
Yeah, is this the same list that the RG published, or does this have different, anything changes on it?
The only ones what didn't get published in the RG were the internal ones, for students and staff. So the community forums, I did not look at the RG, but that's probably what they received. Carrie, maybe you could let us know, because you probably submitted that to the RG.
I believe what's published in the Register Guard is all correct and still the same, but I will double check it right now if there's any question about that being complete and correct. They did publish the list of events. We have the list published on our website with locations. The Register Guard did not have the locations listed.
So it would have been the 5 ones that were listed under the community forums, Laurel, because the community partners are by invitation. So that's going to come through an email and wouldn't be in the Guard. And the students and staff will come internally too.
So my take on this is I see hypocritical differently in that we still have students going to school. We still are telling teachers to be in school all the time. And so for us to be like, but we can't do this is a little bit hypocritical. I do kind of like the hybrid, but I think we almost have a hybrid already, since we do have a mixture of in person and on Zoom. My concern is people who miss out. Like we have some that are specifically for Spanish speakers, and I don't remember who it was from Alma, but they were going to make sure, they were talking about the nuances of just making sure what doesn't get missed. And I think that's really hard to do in Zoom. And also it's hard for them to kind of know our, I'm going to say flavor for lack of another word here, if they're not here. I get we're working in kind of a, not kind of, we're still in the weird situation of COVID. And I think we can be careful and we can mind the procedures and the distancing and wear the proper masks and provide masks, and also still have access for people.
Thank you. Maya.
I have a question that maybe Carrie could answer. My question is, all of these events are scheduled to take place inside of a 4J building. Is the vaccine mandate that staff have been subjected to the same for anybody that's entering a 4J building?
No, these are not during the school day, and no chance of opportunity for overlap with students. So there is not a vaccine mandate for the public coming into those events. There's not a chance of them encountering students during the school day there. There's no guidance from the state indicating that there should be any closure of schools or staff staying at home. However, there is guidance from the state that events, that community events, parent events should be held online, or if they must be held in person, there's a suggestion or recommendation that they be held outside and under cover if possible. Hard with the January weather though.
But is there any reason that we couldn't make that a requirement for attendance?
We have not elsewhere where there has been a public event had any requirement for vaccination. That would be a much different question from what we've done before.
So does that mean it is possible that we do that?
I would not feel comfortable answering that without any sort of research or preparation. It is not anything we have done before. And that's a great question. And I just don't feel prepared to answer it immediately.
Yeah. Laurel.
Well, I get where you're coming from, Maya, but I'm a tad worried about you know, the fun we've had at our own board meetings, that kind of energy taking over for the event, because we've asked for that. Instead of us getting the information we need, we get, the true
Well,
believers.
I had a similar thought, because I'm afraid that it would feel like we're excluding a certain group of people, but I also understand that kind of precaution. So, Martina or Alicia, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm glad that you brought that up, Maya, and I think I'm sort of on the same page as Judy and Laurel here, in that I think the logistics and the potential for both just complexity, like in the staffing of that, like how do we verify? Do we have a person at the door? Like just the potential complication there stresses me out a little bit. And then the additional piece of just like all the energy that has been around vaccines and how people feel about that. So for me, I don't think I would be comfortable implementing something like that for these meetings. I hear both of the sides, both what, you know, Mary and Laurel see as being hypocritical or not in response to where we're at with Omicron. I personally am not comfortable being in large groups right now. That's in part for my own safety as a person with a disability. And that's also because my job exposes me to a pretty high level of risk. I have to go into the hospitals. And so I feel like I am also a risk to others. And so I'm making the choice to not be around anyone other than my spouse, unless I have to, because I don't want to be the vector that gets somebody sick. So that's the decision I've made for myself. I think I'm inclined at this time personally to when the state says this is our guidance, even if they're not saying it's required, I'm inclined that, we've sort of followed that guidance this whole time. And we've had to argue really strongly for following that guidance and not like, we've had people saying like, just do what you want to do. And so I think I come down on the side kind of like, let's listen to what they say and let's try to ensure that we have the highest possibility of access while also not creating the possibility that we're going to have a large, spread event that we host. I would feel pretty bad about that. So I would be interested in problem solving how we could ensure people have access to online forums and then go from there. That's kind of what I would be most comfortable with, I think.
Alicia, I know I see your hand up, Maya, but I was just going to give Alicia a chance first. And yeah.
I appreciate it's tough times. And when we all planned this, we hadn't learned of Omicron or had it in our everyday vernacular. So I just want to talk about us as a board and then talk bigger about those community meetings. It's hard to be the one person on Zoom or the two people on Zoom when everybody's in the room. And I love being in the room. I think it's a different energy and it's a different interaction. But if not everyone feels comfortable being in the room, and I know not everybody on our board feels comfortable in not large groups or even maybe in that group of 10 that would be in the room or however many, I would opt that we do it virtually for just the equity or just making sure everybody has the same access. Some people shouldn't have better access because of their physical ability or their physical wellness. So if not everybody's going to be in the room, I will opt out and I would go on Zoom, even though it's not my favorite thing. I can't make smart ass comments to the person next to me on Zoom. So it does limit me. But and to have 3 people fly in, I mean, that's putting, I understand they'll do it, but there's that risk. And then how do we decide who gets the in-person? Because we've kind of elevated and said, it's better by saying we're going to do it. And so whether we mean it or not, this is kind of how I look at it. We've kind of elevated it to it's a better way, or, you're special if you get it in person and you're not as special if you don't. So I'm just playing with all of those things and curious what other board members think, but that's kind of where I'm thinking right now. And I appreciate the insights from my fellow board members around, what they're pondering and the questions they're asking. Thanks.
Okay, Maya.
So I, this is really hard. I just want to put that out there and say it really straightforwardly because it is a really hard decision. And my inclination is that we're asking our kids and our staff to do something really hard every single day. And that already feels really overwhelming and like we're kind of running the risk of already being in a situation where our numbers increase because of the daily contact that our school communities go through. And I think that I'm probably leaning towards not doing something in person. And I have to preface it with, I just received news of a positive case in a local family member. So I'm also processing, and that's a person who's a 4J person. And it just feels like the potential for this to domino feels really uncomfortable. I don't like the idea of being part of a super spreader event in any capacity, including on a day-to-day basis, just because somebody attends school or is working at a school. I do wonder about our training that was also part of the package deal of being in person. And I, at risk of sounding like one of those people who's saying that in person is better than not in person, because I also just said the opposite for the forums. I wonder if that's something that we should consider separately from the forums, in terms of, although that doesn't answer the question that Alicia just brought up of people coming on airplanes from different parts of the country. And then my last, and so this is just me pondering more than anything, but the last thing I want us to think about also is this is going down in 2 weeks, and we keep being promised, and I'm holding on to that promise that we're going to be in a different situation in 2 weeks. So, okay, I see Alicia shaking her head, and I know she has some, she's not as optimistic as I want to be. But I also just want that to maybe play out as we're having this conversation, is thinking about that this is not happening tomorrow or even next Tuesday, but the following, and what that might look like in terms of differences of the impact. I do want to also, just before I stop, I won't come back and say something again, point out that the level of access for in-person or online is very different for different people. And by moving everything online, it does impact access. For some people, it makes it more accessible, and that's wonderful. But for some people, it removes access, and that makes me a little bit concerned.
I just wanted to add something, and then Laurel will go on to you. So, you know, before, I've been also struggling with this for all the reasons that people have shared. And, you know, if I was thinking of a hybrid, some of the groups I was thinking would be our training, because I do think there would be a value in in-person training from this group very much. And also I think of the students, because, you know, it was set so they could go around to different schools to talk in person to students. So I'd want to think through if that would be really be losing some of their voice by doing it online, or we could replicate something like that. I think staff would be mixed, because I know when I talked to Sabrina to set the time, she also knew that many teachers would like a virtual option because of not having to travel. So, so my original thought was doing maybe students and staff, since we're in the school and our training, and then most of the community things online. But as I listen to people, you know, I don't want to put our community at greater risk either. So I'd like to ask, and maybe this is something you're going to address, Laurel, because I've heard you speak about this. Is there a way for people that would have less access, that we think, you know, not being in person would hurt? Are there ways we can help with that? Whether it's getting them devices, having a space in our ed center with computers set up that people could come to, or something. So those were my thoughts, and I'm going to go to Laurel.
It would be along the lines of, what did you call it? Let me find your, the Community Partners Forum, I would imagine. Making sure we're really reaching out to the community partners who do have the access to talk to those that have less means and less ability to connect. I think we could get voice by having those conversations, and they could possibly, like, I'm thinking of, say, First Place Family Center could provide, they have computers on site. It's possible, though they are not open at night, we could check in when this happens to see best, you know, the best way we can make sure that people can know that they have a voice, and we value this voice. And we really want to know. I know it's hard times, but we want to hear what they want in their schools and leadership for our schools. And there's several examples of that. There's shelter care. There's a lot of programs that do work with those from lower socioeconomic that we can make sure we're really reaching out to. And I think PR for perhaps the survey to really ramp that up and maybe put some funds towards it more, or I don't know if Alma does all the funds towards it. I don't want to step on those toes, but I just mean really making sure that information gets out in our whole area several times over and over, so we can get those probably more surveys than we normally receive, because that's also information and data that we will be able to use. And a lot of times people who don't like Zoom will do it. I don't know about a lot, depends, but they will answer surveys. I mean, we do know, I really wonder about what things can be put off until next month, because there are going to be different numbers. Hopefully they could be higher, but it's most likely they're thinking lower next month. And so can we move that training to, because we're not going to be meeting with anybody by then, right? Because the training is for us to choose. I'm just wondering, what do we have ability to control here? And that doesn't stop the process. So maybe that can be part of the discussion.
Mhm. Thoughts? Anyone else have any thoughts about that? So I'm going to say that I sort of was writing things down as I went. So most people, I think, are leaning towards virtual. And I'm going to just come back to ask Laurel, because you were the one who first said, you know, that you maybe were leaning not towards virtual. So I wonder how you'd feel if we did go virtual and then look at some, you know, one thought is we could do virtual training, begin it. But if we really felt we wanted to go deeper with Alma, see when things are looking better, if they'd want to come out, you know, and we felt that would be beneficial as well. I mean, there's nothing to say we couldn't ask for that as well later.
I guess my problem is the philosophical one, is that I tell my son to go to school every day, and it scares me. And I'm sitting here having a conversation how to protect, I guess, myself and other people. And so philosophically, our schools are open and we're asking people to go, and we don't have good access to testing. And so, I mean, what I just said could be used for and against.
Right, that's what you mean.
You know, it's one of those, like, you know, the lifeboat analogy, you know. I don't know if you ever had to do that in college, but where you're trying to figure these things out. So I mean, it's not an actual win scenario, which we already know from COVID. Nobody's winning right now. So I guess I obviously, you know, if we vote on this, is not going to win if I vote alternatively for us to be in person. I want us to be really mindful of what we're saying, though, even though it's a no-win situation. Like, we are asking people to go to school and work in school every day and to be exposed. And we just signed up to do this, and we are not saying we're better than any of them.
Martina, and then Maya.
Yeah, I hear that, and I hear that ethical and sort of philosophical frustration. It's discussions I have in my life and at work a lot too, and so I'm right there with you. The place that I continue to come to on this is that I just don't see how we honor and work within the risk that people are taking to go to work and to go to school by creating spaces that have additional risks. You know, just like on a fundamental level, you know, at work and at school, we are taking mitigation steps. They're cohorted. We know who is in those buildings. We're not going to have the same control over a public forum. And public fora are inherently a space where there's an additional risk, and we have the capacity to create a less risky version of that in a way that we don't at this moment for all day, everyday education. And so for me, I just don't see how we make things, how we honor that by saying, here's a space where we're going to create the potential for greater overall community risk, right? Because the more the numbers go up, the greater the risk is for everyone in the community. And so I've just kind of come to that place from a public health perspective, that everything that we can do to lower risk is something that benefits the people who have to take more risks, right? Like the reason that I'm not going out, the reason that I'm not seeing people because of the higher risk that I pose because of my job is not because I don't want to see my friends, but it's because everything that I can do to reduce the overall community spread helps all of us. So that's just kind of the personal place that I've come to in my thinking through the ethics of this.
Am I next? Yeah. Just one quick clarification as the parent of a high schooler, the middle schools and high schools don't have cohorts right now. So it's kind of free for all in terms of those gatherings of 500 to 1,000 plus folks every day. I also wonder if there aren't ways that we could kind of keep tabs on who attends these things if we were to go in person. I know when we have folks come and speak in person, we have them sign up ahead of time. I go into lots of buildings, well, not lots, a few buildings where when I walk into the building, I have to sign in. So there is ways that we could, preemptively be ready for any sort of contact tracing that might need to happen. I'm wondering also, is there any way for like what Laurel suggested, which was maybe postponing it by a week or so, or maybe talking with Alma about finding a way to have, assuming that numbers do their magic and go down, if there's any way for us to, as a board, facilitate in-person forums and somehow share out, whether it's having the forum recorded or something along those lines, so that Alma could get that information, and we still keep that as an option. And I also can't help but remember that it's January and we were going to talk about our board goals. And I feel a little bit personally foolish for not having more ardently supported the idea of creating a pandemic and disaster plan. It feels like right now we would know what we were going to be doing because we'd have a plan for something just like this. And so I just want to, I feel like kicking myself. It feels like we're inventing the airplane as we're flying, and that doesn't help the situation feel any bit more comfortable. But yeah, I mean, like Laurel says, and I've said also, we're asking for members of our community to do this on a daily basis. So however we move forward, I hope we're all taking that into consideration.
Just want to add another perspective to that piece, because I completely agree that it feels, no matter how we look at it, it feels hypocritical to me, because I look at the guidance that the Department of Ed put out is that to protect our kids and our staff, because we feel so strongly it's important for kids to get their in-person instruction, minimize everything else around to reduce spread in the community. So in a way, their whole guidance is about keeping schools open and really following all those rules. And if you can do anything else extracurricular or in the community online, please do, to reduce it. So I feel all ways about it. And I also agree with people say we're asked, it's good to model what's going on. I'm not sure anyone has a plan for this, honestly, out there in the world. Everywhere, every table I'm at, people are trying to figure this out because, we made plans based on thinking things would be mitigated. And now, we have this new variant to deal with. I'm worried about postponing too many things. My thought would be, let's proceed with what we have planned and figure out ways to get people access. And then if things really do look good in another 3 weeks, let's say, and they haven't come out for this, maybe we should be having, if it really looks like it's on a slope, we could have the idea of having a couple, doing a follow-up training or phase 2 of our training in person and having some in-person forums. So I'm not opposed to that either, but I don't want to plan for that and put things off and then be disappointed, because now I'm hearing it's more like February. And I think since we're building our more robust, what we're going to be screening our applicants on, et cetera, I think it's important to get this input sooner rather than later, this phase. I'm hoping when we have finalists and they come out and people can meet them, that's going to be critically important to be in person. And I hope that will be a different situation. Laurel, is your hand up again, or is it? Yeah.
I'm thinking of a compromise in that I would like to look, I don't know who is Alma gathering the data for all these meetings. They're going to be at all of them and they're getting the data for how many people come. And I guess I would like to know the matrix for our response ratio, how much we want to see. And if we're not getting close to that, then we agree to have more meetings. Because we will be able to see if we're not getting enough information or what is expected to come in. What happens a lot with this, especially during COVID, is you just get like the in-school testing that is being done by the university. Not many people are participating in the schools. It's a really low response to the testing. So it would be really helpful if a lot of kids did it, but not many people signed up for it. So it's there, it's a great thing. It's not super helpful because it's not happening really. So I really want us to be aware of that and to look at these numbers and to say, if we don't have enough, we will have more meetings because we want this information. It's important.
Mary.
Well, I hate to be a curmudgeon here, but this sounds like we're giving Alma a blank check. I mean, we're talking about 2 sets of visits now and unlimited community forums. We don't know what's going to happen. None of us knew this pandemic was going to last this long. So I think, and during the past year, I don't know how many emails we got about, getting kids back in school. And we always said, out of an abundance of caution, we're going to, not have kids in school. And I think we just need to continue that. And it's out of an abundance of caution for the community and ultimately for the students. And I just think trying to, split the hairs and do we have this online? Do we have this in person? It's a nightmare. And I appreciate Laurel's suggestions about trying to, increase the participation for a certain select members of the community. But, my question is, who's going to do that? It takes bodies to do some of that stuff. And the same with the board facilitating any follow-up meetings. It takes us to do that. And I don't know that I want to be in those meetings, in person at this point in time, given that we're seeing this big surge. And it just seems like it would be easier and we could put more of our resources and energy into making it all online. And you could have more than one. You've got one set for Thursday the 18th or Tuesday the 18th. You could have 2 or 3. You could have them back to back. It just seems like online actually offers more opportunity for people to be involved in a safe environment. Because I just really am concerned. I've got a friend that just got it too, and she was vaccinated. It's not severe, thank God, but it's everywhere. They're saying, I don't know, maybe Alicia can nod her head on this, but she doesn't have to reveal, but that everybody's probably going to be exposed to it. So I just really don't feel comfortable putting everyone at risk. And, with regard to students, yeah, I know we ask our teachers and our staff and our teachers to be there. And I would say that it's a much more controlled environment. We know who's in the building. People have to sign in and sign out. I think with the forums, it's much more loosey-goosey. And if you're a volunteer in the building like I am, I have to have a background check. They know who I am when I walk in the door, and I still have to sign in. So I just think either or, and don't try to do a hybrid. It's just easier everything's online, and then everyone has access, and we can have the meetings go as long as we want, basically. And I would just again vote for all online. And I know it sucks. COVID sucks. I'm tired of it. And I just think out of an abundance of caution, we shouldn't be making these public. Thank you.
Alicia.
Okay, thank you, Judy. I'm guessing we'll do a vote today to make a decision about how to move forward. That is my thought. So I was going to make a motion. But before I do, I just want to go on record and say, I want everything in person. That's what I want. It's not what I'm going to get, because I also have to be a leader in the community. And so I am going to make a motion that we go all virtual. With that motion, I want to, I appreciate that very important points that have been brought forward, which is we need to make sure that we provide, and maybe in some cases it will be a unique way that we do it. And I kind of look to the small committee to kind of process through, that we provide opportunities for virtual to people that otherwise have been left out of that, or could be left out. I also want to call out, I thought Laurel's point was a really good one about, are we getting the numbers we expect? How do we know what we expect? Well, I would say that we probably know what we got when we hired Gus, and we want to make sure those are diverse in nature, but we would want more than when we hired Gus, because we've had more community engagement. We want to do more. We as a board said we wanted to do more. So is there a way to look at the numbers and kind of set a goal for the number of people we want to make sure they do the survey and do the have a chance for the online meetings? I would suggest that we do our bias training. I also want this as scheduled, because we're going to be doing this work all along. And then I will support and do support that after we do that first round, if we think it would make sense in February and we as a board agree could find time to do something in person and it's safe, that that we leave that open as an option, because Alma will not, in my proposal, will not be flying out. So that also addresses Mary's issue about talking about the funds, but we would have that ability, and maybe that is before we do our, you guys, I would look to the small group that we have put forward to kind of make that decision. I know that's my thinking, and now I'll make the motion. So I did not make a motion and then ramble on. I just want you to know. So my motion, Judy, I just need to see you. Are we doing a motion tonight, or should I just move on?
I would say that it probably would be a good idea. I was going to wait to see how in sync we were, but yes, a motion would be good.
And the reason I'm making a motion is I think we're trying to fix a problem we can't fix,
Yeah.
but we can do a good job at laying out a path for the most inclusive, because that's what we want. We want to be safe and we want to be inclusive. And I think everybody's input has laid that path out.
Can I just add one thing to what you
Absolutely.
before you make the motion? Alma shared that, they just did this in Cincinnati very recently in the middle of, it was, with the Delta, and that they got much more online. They did a few in person. They got significantly more online participation than they did. Very few people participated in person, and they just shared that. And I would say they probably will have some good guidance and experience to share about what good amount of input from the community, not only looking at our past record, but also they would have some wisdom about that, I think. So.
And I hope everybody's okay with the motion. I can't see everybody's face because I'm not at home and I don't have my computer. So I see Judy and I, so I can't read it. But my motion is that we move everything to virtual with Alma for the next round, with the option to go in person if things change. And the small group will prompt that. That's my motion.
Do I have a second? Martina seconds it. So Alicia moves and Martina seconds. And I see that Laurel, you've had your hand up. Do you want to speak to the motion?
Yes. So I want to amend it to include Alicia's rambling. You have that all written down, right? So I think it's important that we include the fact that we want the numbers at a certain level, and that we also allow for the fact that Zoom training and Zoom anti-bias training may not be enough, and that we may. So I think those things should be included, and I think and that we are reaching the community organizations that can really reach out to their people. So I really want those to be part of this, and not just assume that's going to happen, because I've seen in the past that doesn't actually happen unless it's part of the decision making.
Do you have a suggestion for an amendment wording? Is that why you're raising your hand, Alicia or Laurel? Do you have wording?
I was just asking if it was a friendly amendment, because if it was just a friendly amendment and that we have those 3 bullet points, bias training can be, we leave it open that we might do a second bias training in person, that we attempt to reach out to communities and offer options for virtual for them to participate virtually, that we reach out to. And I don't know the words that we would want to use, so I look to one of you people that have your degree in English, that we reach out to hard to serve or less represented or whatever.
Well, as part of the community partners, I guess we just want to make sure that the people that may be underserved because of the lack of being able to meet in person.
So are you fine with making sure that underserved communities have access? Is that the way to say it? That would be okay?
And that actually will cover more than one thing, because we were talking in leadership about making sure we write so that people, kind of give instructions for how to access from their phones and
okay. So virtual, perhaps, for bias training, reaching out to underserved, and that our input, I had suggested we look at how much we got last time and make sure we have at least that and more. That's a benchmark. I don't know if somebody has a better benchmark, but those were the 3 things that I had talked about, Laurel. And if that is what you want to put forward, Laurel, I would accept that as a friendly amendment.
Yes, I don't think we missed anything there. Did anybody else?
So the numbers, target the numbers at higher than we had last time for our search. Be open to a second in-person anti-bias training, and work with our partners and ways to ensure participation of all underserved people or people who might be having community members that have difficult time accessing virtually. Are those the 3? Okay.
Yes.
Mary?
Point of information. So when you talk about past participation, when we hired Gustavo, compared to what are we looking for? What's the number? The number of bodies we talked to, the number of responses, the number of community forums. I mean, I don't want staff to go on this wild goose chase, and I'm not even sure that they kept that data. But I remember that we had many community forums, because I think they started in October or November. So I'm just wondering what number are we looking for? It's just a point of information for me. Thank you.
So, are you okay with me answering that, Judy?
Yeah.
So Mary, what I think, so I know what I'm want to make sure is that we don't lessen the number of voices we heard because we're going virtual. I don't think that will be the case, but and maybe we didn't keep it, but if we did, I was just thinking that was a good benchmark, and I would have gone with not the community forums when they came and they listened to the two finalists, but all the forums that happened before that. So those were the in-person, because we didn't do virtual then. The in-person community forums that happened before we determined the finalists. And of course, if they don't have them, if they don't have that data, it would be a moot point.
Thank you. Laurel.
And I'm assuming Alma would have some idea of, you know, amount of population, amount of people in school per, you know, there is a benchmark in data of what is considered a good data point.
I think that's right. And that's what I said. So I think we should look at the data that exists, consult with Alma, and set a target. Okay.
I have a clarification. So does that mean that if we're not reaching that target, then we will continue to add on forum after forum until we reach that target? I don't mean to sound glib. I hope the answer is yes. I'm nodding, hoping that that's what the intention is behind Alicia and Laurel's friendly amendment.
That's what I heard.
That would be my intention.
Okay. Any more discussion on this?
I have one more thing, and I don't know how to include this, but is it appropriate for us to encourage families to use their children's 4J issued devices to attend?
Thank you for asking that, Maya. We talked about that at leadership yesterday, and definitely it is okay. I don't know, Carrie just turned on her screen. Did you have something to add with that?
Well, our primary purpose with student technology is to offer education to students and do that in a safe way. So we do have some safety restrictions on those devices, and we want to test and make absolutely sure that it will work for a parent to access how these meetings are set up. But we believe so, that is fine. And also parents can use smartphones or call in. We'll work to make sure that there's information out about all of the ways that a meeting can be accessed if people don't have a home desktop or laptop computer. So yes, but we're confirming the details of how, making sure that that will work well.
Great. Is that your clarification? Good, Maya? Okay. So are we ready to vote on this? Okay, then all those in favor of the motion as put forward by Alicia and with a friendly amendment, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. It looks like it passes unanimously. We have 6 board members present and all are voting yes. So the motion passes unanimously. All right, great job. So committee, I will be probably emailing you tonight or tomorrow to get a meeting. And I would say thank you again so much for taking the time to have this conversation. I think it's a much more thoughtful decision making it together. And I would like to adjourn this special meeting and tell you to have a good evening.